What's going on, guys? It's Chris here.
And Charlie.
Hey, and we want to welcome you once again to this show, Fusion Real Estate Investing Network. And we have a guest today. We have Whitney, right?
Hello.
So welcome. So Whitney here, you're basically co-owner of Billwood Properties, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about like what you do and basically what is Billwood Properties?
Well, I guess as you guys know, Billwood Properties, we are a turnkey investment company. So I primarily handle the property management side, mainly the operations of everything. Charlie's more on the deals and the investments, and I handle most of the real dirty nitty gritty work. So.
Okay, so you do property management, you do residential, and I think you do multifamily also, right? So what are some of the things that you've seen in the Hagerstown market, just really quick?
I can't imagine that there's much I haven't seen, honestly. But as far as like right now, the hot topics is the things that are standing out on my head is I've had a lot of insurance claims lately.
Okay.
A lot of freeze damage, the weathers,
the winter,
the temperatures. Right? Yeah, really low.
Oh man, winter.
Yeah, which by the way, we probably have seasoned investors watching this saying like, yep, the freaking winter. Because I know a couple of my rentals too, the actual water it doesn't flow anymore because it's frozen, right? Yeah. Thank God I didn't get any frozen pipes on an explosion, but we get that a lot, and I know you had a couple. In
I had a whole duplex, both sides. The radiators, every single radiator that was in the property, basically cracked and exploded.
And which is really important to emphasize. Because when you have vacant units, you got to be very careful with those.
Well, I definitely think I win when it comes to the frozen pipe issues.
Yeah.
So I have a property that I manage. It's a 16-unit building.
Okay.
We had one unit that the heating system malfunctioned, and it caused one frozen pipe. 16 units, and it's like left and right. But the freeze damage and the water damage happened on the 4th floor, leaked the whole way down to the 1st floor, all the way down to the basement into where like the electric room is.
Oh, God.
Yeah, fuse boxes. So we're talking electric issues, plumbing issues.
Oh my goodness.
Now water damage from the ceiling and plaster and drywall and whatnot. So, but. The great thing about having a property manager and experts in place is I've been able to take care of that. Like my clients have been in and out of the country. I actually have no idea where they are right now, but they haven't had to come in town to handle it. I've been able to address all of those things for them.
So basically, just very quickly to make sure that obviously for the people that are watching, if you're a beginner or a seasoned investor, you want to make sure that you want to look on the holding period. What can go wrong, because you want to minimize your risk, right? So then one thing about holding right is to do your due diligence and be careful. And one of the things is like going and listening to shows like this, kind of learning a little bit. Because if I'm a beginner, I don't know what I should watch out for. So this is definitely something you have to watch out for. Now, Whitney, I want to know, because I'm curious myself, what is your story? Like, how did you start this thing? And I know it's probably similar to Charles, because you guys obviously are together. Which, by the way, happy Valentine's Day for everybody watching this.
Happy Valentine's Day.
So, basically tell us a little bit about, tell everybody
you
here.
See where I dragged her at on Valentine's Day?
What?
Yeah, so
you gotta put this work in. This is how it gets done.
Yeah, we're gonna get you some value.
You gotta get everybody on the same page if you're trying to get something done, and this is a great example here.
Well, just to let everybody know, I've been in hiding for about 2 years now. As far as this is the first live stream, so I think this is a great Valentine's Day gift to give to you to come out. And just talk about. So as far as my story. I know that I don't know how much of the people watching know, but we started out, with buy and holds. I know that's primarily what you guys discuss, but we started out with buy and holds. We built all of that to replace. The initial idea was to replace my income. At the time, I was just a waitress at Waffle House, so wasn't very much income to have to replace.
And how long ago was that when you?
2009.
So right after when you saw the bubble coming in, it was kind of dropping there. And so, I mean, it's kind of ironic. So you got started when that happened. So what, did you see an opportunity there or?
Well, I actually give that part to Charlie. He was the one who was kind of seeking out deals. Our initial house that our very first purchase in Hagerstown was a $25,000 house on North Cannon, which is rented today at $850 and has been cash flowing ever since. Just to let you know. Very minimal maintenance and whatnot. But we purchased that property for us to live in. We renovated it for a couple of months. It took us a while. Definitely not, as seasoned as we are now. We know what to look for. But we did that. We rented it out. We lived in that property for a couple of years. But during that time, we decided to refinance that property, use the equity to purchase some more properties. What I was saying with the idea was to replace our income, or my income at first, initially with the passive income. We were shooting for at the time $300.
$300 a property.
Yeah. If I was making $1,200 a month, that was 4 properties that we had to get.
And so you got started just buying and holding slowly. Now, so Billwood Properties, did that happen right after you bought a couple rentals, or did that?
So we bought a couple of properties. We replaced my income. I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home mom, and I learned very quickly that is not my forte. I went stir crazy. I didn't like it. Of course, I managed our properties, but then I started to offer the solution of not even managing, just offering tenant placement to other owners. I did it the real hardcore way. I was doing Craigslist cold calls. I was, talking to landlords all the time, talking to tenants and trying to match them up, saying, hey, I have this tenant that called me about my place for rent. I approved them. Will you give me $150 if I can show them your property? So
she was a cold call master.
Yeah, I did a lot of cold calls, a lot of
familiar.
Meeting them at the property, scheduling the showing, meeting them, talking to them, selling them on the tenant placement. And that's how I built the business, with that and social media. That really helped propel us.
Which, by the way, just a quick thing, I really think the Billwood Properties probably does the best, at least for Western Maryland, even Maryland, really. I mean, if you look at the social media reach that you guys have, it's incredible. I think I'm very impressed. I mean, the branding that they have created. You guys have started, I mean, you're growing, and it's incredible. So that's why I'm always curious how you were able to think and actually start. So you started, making passive income and helping landlords, and you got really good at that. So what made you, okay, I got to start a company, and I want to grow this company huge? When did that train of thought came in?
That train of thought came in where the goal was always to... I think originally we said we were going to have 200 units. We wanted 200 units, and that's what we were going to retire off of. We were going to live in some beach and retire. That was the idea. When we were thinking of that, we had started looking at property management companies. We were looking at all of our options, and I'm kind of a control freak in some ways, so I just really wanted to be adamant about our properties being managed the way that I manage them. So the idea was, we start Billwood Properties, and we create our own vessel that is in our own system of teams that that's
do it the way that we
wanted to do, and
instead of just turn it over, basically.
Correct. But also, it wasn't just a morality thing. It also had to do with finances. I was just thinking if I'm going to pay a property management company 10%, I might as well find a way to turn this into an income. So now I'm managing other properties. I've created the system to have a team to manage other people's properties that are also managing my own, and it's no longer an expense. It's now an income for me. That's the idea.
So that's how it started. So then creating more income through the business. Now, how many employees? Tell me just a little bit. So how many employees do you have currently?
Well, we're in the process of looking for some new staff members. We have the capacity to have, I think we should have about 14. Right now we're going to be posting for some new positions here soon. But right now I think there's 9 of us in the office. Actually 10. 10.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's growing. I mean, I'm sure you probably started just by yourself at one point in the beginning. You started growing. So you basically help investors that are buying and holding here in Hagerstown to manage their properties.
Boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground. Yeah, I know you guys have been in Hagerstown for quite a bit, many years. I think you were born around in Hagerstown.
Yes.
He was, I wasn't.
Right, and I think, but you guys been here, you have history in Hagerstown for a long time. So it's funny because, Charles, I meet a couple people and some of them are, they were your friends or at one point. It's kind of interesting. So you've been here for a while. And the advantage to that, I think, you know a lot of people. So you know handymans, you know a lot of people you can delegate work with, which is great to have at a property management company.
Get it done.
Get it done, exactly.
Actually, I had a client in here today. She was looking at possibly buying some turnkey properties.
Okay.
And I said, basically, all I need you to do is I need you to tell me what your problem is so I can solve it.
Right.
And I said, that's the only thing that I need you to do.
Exactly.
So I think that's really important when you're talking about property management. Is having people around you that can solve problems, and that's what we do all day long.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so now that we have an idea of Whitney and the company Billwood Properties, now it's time to answer and kind of go in depth on what property management is and what are the breakdowns and the processes to be successful. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned investor, you want to know, because I'm a big believer, because I have rentals of my own and as a real estate agent helping investors that buy and hold. Property management is the thing that they have to understand. Now, either you're going to manage the property yourself, in which case you got to learn, you have to have a mentor, you have to have somebody guiding you that's already doing it successfully, or number two, delegate that to somebody like Billwood Properties. So at this point, we're going to have this here. That's the number right there. If you have any questions.
Actually, I think Jamie could throw the number up on the screen.
Okay. If Jamie can do that, that would be great.
Yeah.
So
we moved up from the sign.
Okay.
So this is, we did do the sign. Huh?
Okay, so we're gonna have a number on the screen, and I want you to text that number with your question, and I will call you, or we're gonna answer that question right away on the spot. So make sure you text me at that number, and it's 240-706-1082. It's gonna be on the screen right there. Ask any questions you have in regards to property management, okay? So to get started, we got Whitney here.
Sorry.
We got Whitney here.
I don't know how to turn it off. I was trying to share it.
No, so we got. No, you go ahead. You're fine. So Whitney's gonna kind of give us her insight while we both debate on what's the best strategy. What are some tips and tricks for you guys, beginners or seasoned investors, and how to buy and hold.
Quick question here. In the comments section, William Luther.
Yeah.
Man, I know that guy from somewhere. He says, what is the advantage of having a property manager rather than managing the property yourself?
Is that for me to answer? Okay. I believe there's pros and cons to both. It all starts with knowing what your goals are and what you can handle and manage as a property or as an investor or a rental owner. So some of the advantages are like when I just mentioned the leaks and stuff. You don't have to handle that. You just make a call or you get an update. I literally right before we started this live stream, I just updated them like, hey, this is what's going on. They don't have to do anything. They just worry about their dollar signs and how they're going to make their income. Some people, like myself, actually enjoy this. I don't know why, but I do. I enjoy it. So, if you're one of those people, you're gonna go crazy if you hire a property manager because you know that you're the best person to handle your properties. Then you are gonna go crazy. You're gonna drive your property manager crazy, and it's not a good fit. You have to know what it is your expectations are.
Yeah, and my take on that is if you have it depends on your level of experience and your situation. Everybody's different. Some live far away from the rentals, maybe an hour or two or three. Some people just don't want to deal with them. They want to have a rental where it's the least amount of time, that takes the least amount of time, which at that point it makes sense to allocate some, it will be an expense, obviously. But like just like anything, number one, it's negotiable, and number two, you want to find a competent property management that will you feel comfortable with, and and you could be successful that way. But let's say you live 30 minutes and you are somewhat comfortable. Maybe you have a mentor, somebody that has a couple properties and is guiding you in the tenant placement, which we're gonna dive into very quickly, which is a great question. What's the William, right? William Luther. Thank you very much. Any other question? Make sure you comment here below. So let's now dive into property management. So if you guys had to define property management for the beginners there, what would it be, Whitney? What is the definition?
If I define, well, there's different levels to property management and what a property management company offers, and that's again with knowing what you're looking for, making sure you have that open line of communication with whoever you're going to have manage your properties, to understand what solutions they offer. I happen to think just because we are a turnkey company, we are a very, very inclusive, or I don't know what the word is, but we handle a lot. So there's a lot of property managers that may not handle your insurance claims. They're not handling your taxes. But at the very basic form, property management is handling your rent collection, processing your maintenance calls. There's things that you don't want to answer. You don't want to get that phone call in the middle of the night. Right. And managing your finances and moving things along in that way.
Yeah. So basically, you save
finding the tenants.
Right.
Too,
you save the whole. Because property management is different processes, right? I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the main thing about property management company, is if there is empty units, the main thing is how do I find a great tenant, which is the tenant placement side of things. And then once you put a tenant there, managing that tenant for the owner. So it saves time and it saves money sometimes, right? Because if you put the wrong tenant in the unit, that tenant is not going to pay you in time. It's probably he's not going to take ownership of that unit. It's probably going to not, if he's going to see a leak, he won't care.
Right. Not to mention if you don't have the correct processes in place, then that gets prolonged even more.
Correct.
So if you have a property management company, for us, we file on the 6th of every month for our failure to pay rents. So if we're filing that, it's, the process and it's going to happen. The tenants are trained to that process on how that's going to happen, as opposed to, if you were renting to me and you thought, I was really pretty and you just didn't want to file the failure to pay rent, right away, you're prolonging your time. You don't have that system in place.
What I also think property management brings to the table, and again, there's pros and cons of doing it yourself and not doing it yourself. Is I think a lot of people that may not know what they're doing, property management may help them kind of get ahead of the curve, but there's cons to that inexperienced person may not know what to look for inside a property management agreement. Now that's a whole other story.
And now just to go in order, for instance, for our beginners, right, or unseasoned, in the acquisition part of things, because I know that if I'm a beginner and I know for a fact, hey, look, I live too far away, I don't have experience property managing, in property management, and I'm gonna buy my first duplex, let's say. Now, how do I find this great property management? Now, it could be word of mouth, it could be Google, it could be many different areas. But in your opinion, how do you find the right property manager? What questions do you ask them, in your opinion?
So I guess as far as finding them, that's relative. You can find them anywhere, but the real issue is how do you decide?
Correct.
If that's the right person. A lot of our clients, we've met them before they actually purchase the property. We go to the property. So you want to make sure that when you contact the person, they are willing to do that. They should be able to guide you in your purchase. They should be an asset of value to you in that way. They should tell you how much the property is going to be able to rent for. They should tell you what to expect. So you want to make sure that they are offering value to you in the beginning.
See, now that's very, very good point, because if I'm in Baltimore or Arlington or Alexandria, if I'm just trying to put myself in somebody new, even if I'm a seasoned investor going to a new marketplace, how do I find this competent property manager? And I think that's great. Is reaching out to them, asking, hey, what are the rents? And my best advice that I can tell you guys is do your own due diligence, gather some facts, and then call multiple, like 3 property management companies and ask them questions that you already have the right answers to. So you want to confirm to see if they really know what they're talking about, if they understand the marketplace. And perhaps ask him, how many units have you helped other investors with same property that I need help with?
It's also important to know what kind of portfolio that property manager has and what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis, to make sure that it fits. You don't want, if you're purchasing a property, a duplex, as you mentioned, like say, I don't know, an inner city or in town property that's going to rent for $850, $950. You want to find property managers that are renting the similar properties. You don't want them, the ones that have townhouses for $1,400, $1,500 a month. They're not going to look at your asset or your investment in the same way.
Right.
That was, so when I thought about your question earlier, that's probably a better way to find the property. Look at who's marketing properties similar to yours.
And in the location, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, you know, if what if the property management in that neighborhood, I mean, what if the property manager that you're talking to knows what they're talking about and has rentals in that neighborhood? You know, maybe ask for some referrals of clients. That could work too.
That's basically a lot of our clients that we have. I can ride on the same streets that they have rental properties at, and I can point and say, hey, this is my building here. Turn a corner. Oh, yeah, I have a building here. I sold this property.
Yeah.
So it's just being also familiar with the neighborhood.
Correct. So, sorry, go ahead.
One thing I was going to say, the real value that you cannot beat in any property manager is finding one that invests in properties themselves.
Okay, that's great. I agree that with 100%.
Because other than that, they're just soliciting your business because either they really don't believe in the market, or they
really don't have it down.
Right.
I say they don't believe in the market because they're not putting their actual money into the market. They're just soliciting other owners.
Correct.
They're not really invested in
and I agree with that. Even you know, as a real estate agent, I understand that if you specialize in something, you're great at something. Why would you go and work with somebody that has never worked and doesn't even have a rental? How is he going to guide you through the tenant placement, through the eviction process, through the right tenant filtering? You know, that's the tenant placement. So we went in, we talked a little bit about the acquisition side, right? So again, once you're talking to property management companies, you want to find out, okay, could you help me and tell me, you know, take a look at the units and tell me what they would rent for. Tell me a little bit about the marketplace. Is this an average condition? Will this be competitive in the marketplace? Certain questions like that. So in the acquisition phase, it's very important. And make sure you have a team, right? So then the second thing on the second phase, which is the holding period, I think that
can I add something with the so with the beginning phase, when you have your property manager or your prospective property manager look at the property, really important. Ask them about what their ideas for what their perspective on the maintenance is going to be for that property.
Oh, that's true.
You know, see what their perspective is. If you have three of us, so Charlie may say, well, I don't know, you might want to check out this roof, or you know, and I may say you want to look at the paint colors. You know, look and see what kinds of things they're suggesting that you do over, you know, to make this property marketable, or just over time.
I was going to say, what I was going to add to that is, or are they even going to show up? Do they want you to own the actual property before they help you throughout that process to identify what kind of investment you should make or maybe not make?
The reason why I brought up the maintenance is because you want to know in advance. This is the person who potentially may handle your renovations and handle your maintenance. Your maintenance is where it can make or break your investment.
Correct. Absolutely.
So you want to know in their mind what have they already picked apart about your property? What's realistic? What's not? That's your best, to me, the best way to really identify.
I agree 100%. I always tell my clients that you know, choosing the right tenant. The tenant is the key because they define the consistency of cash flow you have. So, you know, if you have a bad tenant and they don't take care of the property, they might not care about the condition. They won't tell you things, and so the what do you call it? The condition of the property will deteriorate faster, which it would cost you to spend some money renovating, et cetera, et cetera. But if you have somebody that's proactive, takes ownership of the unit, and tells you, hey, look, this is happening and that's happening, you will save money on water. Okay, you will save money on electricity and many other things. But aside that, most importantly, is how to generate your income. So having a tenant that pays you on time, it's vital in this business. And I think you bring a great point, actually. Before you purchase the property, you have to have already a team guiding you on the condition, the rent, the rent values, and maybe the upside that there is on the units. So that's very important. Now, what about the second phase, which is the holding period? Now, let's talk a little bit about an empty unit. Okay, so let's talk about tenant placement, which I believe is probably the Pareto principle says that 20% of the actions gives you 80% of the results. I think that tenant placement is that on property management, and I think that. We want to know everything you know about tenant placement. At least give us everything for seasoned and beginner investors on how you choose the right tenant for your unit.
So I have had every experience through every strategy that we have tried as far as tenant placement and how we find them. We do social media. We do a lot of different marketing. So the biggest thing is you want to get yourself as large of a tenant pool as possible. But I do we do credit checks, criminal checks, verify their income, which is more important than the two that I just mentioned. Verify their income and the longevity of how long they've been at their job. You want to know that they have stable income. And then you want to know, you want to look and see if they have any landlord issues or utilities and collections. I personally am a little bit different. I don't care about your credit score at all. I really want to know if there's any indication that you will not pay your rent or your utilities or anything that has to do with your living expenses. So that's what I look for in a credit report. When I'm looking at like income, I like to see 3 times the income. You want to make sure that they have 3 times the income, and you want to make sure that they've had the ability to afford that for a long period of time.
Correct.
I say a year. You know, if they had a change in, you want to see stable income for a year. 6 months is short. Employer may, that may not work out. So you want to know, you want to see that income.
I do agree. I think the biggest thing of a tenant, obviously, if we break it down, a tenant has to, depending on the tenant, it's going to be the consistent of your cash flow we're talking about. So the first thing you want to look at is, okay, has this tenant have the ability to pay on time in the future? And I think a couple ways, like you mentioned, is verifying their employee, calling their employee, and the employer, excuse me, and then you have you want to look at the credit score. I think the credit score gives you like a past track record. I personally, if I see bankruptcy, obviously it's a no-no. Seeing
what's on the credit report.
Right. Yeah, I look at the report. So bankruptcy doesn't scare me as much because we know the difference of the markets. You know that somebody, if I had come across a person that bought a property and ended up with an upside down mortgage and had to file bankruptcy and foreclosure, but they have had a consistent job for a very, very long time. I would look at that because they happen to get caught in a very
years ago, right? So how many years do you think you would accept? What if it was last year? Would you do that?
It depends. I look at the whole entire picture.
Gotcha.
So I look at the entire application. I look at it and it tells me a story.
Which I think it's very interesting because I agree with Whitney. She says that you have to understand the marketplace. So understand the demographics, the household income. So in Hagerstown, it's about 39,000, I think, per household. And that kind of gives you an indication of where people are at. And also you want to look at the average credit score maybe in town, certain data of that nature that will kind of give you an idea. I do agree with you in regards to credit because in my personal experience, when I have 10 units, and in those 10 units, I do believe that most of my tenants didn't have credit scores above 600. Okay, but however, I do dive in, like you said, you want to see the whole picture. You want to make sure what happened to them in the past, if it's been recent, or maybe they have multiple, maybe $15,000+ in debt, and they failed to pay in the past 6 months. It could be a yellow flag, a red flag. So you got to see the whole picture. So I think verifying their employer, right, the employment, and then you want to look at the past track record. And then their income, bills. Right? 3 times, you said 3 times more than what they make. Okay, that's great. I like that. And then you want to look at also, what about criminal background and all that stuff?
Ours is very simple. We don't accept any felonies within the last 7 years. One thing I will say that landlords fail at is they usually go, Maryland has public case search. I don't know how many people do that. It's you can use that, but it's very, very important to only go off of what their convictions are. So I try not to, I don't even tease myself in that way and go search that because you may see somebody with 1 million charges and you could deny them, but realistically on paper. See, for us, for me, it's more important that we're looking at everybody in the same way and practicing fair housing than it is for me to go and, you know, be an investigator for this person. Also, I understand like why you say like, yeah, it's really, really important that you find the right person and you do everything, but it's also, I don't think that it's as important as it is to have the best practices in place and processes in place to be able to remedy that very immediately, because no matter what you do on paper, you know, somebody can look very good on paper and they still don't pay their rent on time. So you want to make sure that you have all your systems in place to be able to resolve those issues. But with the criminal, we no major felonies, and we go off of what is actually convicted.
Right, and what I tell all my clients that are managing their properties, because I manage all my properties, and one thing that I've noticed is, think of it as a funnel, right? You have a funnel here, and when you're marketing your unit, you start here. So when you advertise, you can advertise on Craigslist, HotPass, Zillow.com, Apartments.com. And actually, that has been working for me very great. It's systems that are free, like cozy.com. It's cozy.co. Beautiful system. It's free. It markets your property, syndicates to different websites. You put a great description, and that's where this starts. So when you put your description, you have a lot of people, right? Think of it as a funnel. All of them that are seeing your marketing material or your property are here. And what you do, how you filter. One thing that a lot of landlords don't do. Is putting on the description. You know, you can do something such as non-refundable application fee of $39.99, covers applicants' background check, credit check, and then below that you could put your credit score requirements and any other requirements that you want everybody to know. So what you're doing there is, if 100 people saw your site or your unit, now all of a sudden half or 70% of them are gone. Now you're narrowing, and all of them are going to give you a call. Not all of them, but the majority are going to give you a call. And then when you talk to them, what I do personally is I reiterate that. You know, I answer all their questions, and then if they want to come take a look at the unit, I said, but by the way, as you saw on the description, and then you just read that like a script, and then 3 out of 10 times you're going to hear click, and they'll hang up on you, which is great. That's what you want. That's part of this. So once they meet you, same thing. They meet you. They like the apartment. How do we proceed? Well, and you say that script, and probably maybe if you get 5 people, 2 of them are gonna apply, and out of those 2 people, they're closest to the ideal tenant. And then you obviously do your due diligence with employment verification, credit check, background check. What are some other things that you look into when you want to screen a tenant, let's say? What I train our staff to do when we're doing the phone calls, I train that pre-screening on the phone. We say, we ask all those questions, and we clearly say, okay, you're interested in this property. It's $800 a month. So we require 3 times the rent. So it's $2,400 a month. Would you say you make at least that? Immediately, they're gonna know if they make that much or not. You can allow them to still see the property, allow them to apply. But my number one thing that I tell everybody says, I don't want to waste your money, want you to waste your money on your application fee. Correct.
So I'm asking you these questions because these are the questions that I'm going to look for in an application. So all I'm doing at this point is I'm confirming the information that you just told me. And that's what your $30 is paying for, or in your case, $39.99. For that, I just make sure that they know that this is for them. We're not just saying, oh, pre-screen. We want to save people money. We don't want, I'm not in this business to to make money off of an application fee.
Correct.
I want to, every time we get an application, I want it to be approved. Our success rate in that, I'd say, there's always the one-off, but I'd say at least 90. This is a random number that just pulled out of my head, but like 90. I'd say 9 out of every 10 applicants that we get are approved because of going through that process.
Right. I think that's vital. And another thing that I just thought about is questions. Questions. So, for instance, if they're talking on the phone and or even yellow flags or red flags that you can identify somebody, because people lie, right? Some people lie. They think you're not gonna do your due diligence, especially for people that are managing themselves. Maybe not to a property management company.
That's another thing that you're kind of hitting on there.
Yeah.
the difference that I've seen
Yeah.
is when we had our rental properties and we were just managing them on our own, some tenants would target us just because we were a private landlord.
Yeah.
Right. Now, you'll see these postings, you may see them on your Facebook, or people just say, I only want to rent from private landlords. It's some of those people just know they're not going to qualify through a property management.
Correct.
They feel, or they have that perception.
Yes.
That's what I want to change, is that the perception is not that just because it's a property management company, you're going to be disqualified. Sometimes when you have that, people just think, oh, I have to go through this process and I may be denied for it. So that's what you want to try to, it's all about educating them and saying, this is what we look for. This is what it is.
Yeah.
And then one of the key questions is, I forget now.
It's okay. We actually have a question really quick. So Mark Hansen says, if I have a bad tenant not paying rent, how long is the eviction process? Which, that's a great point. What would you say? Whitney, you are a pro in this. Go ahead.
45 to 60 days max in Hagerstown, and through the Washington County District Court.
Now that doesn't mean that it could be in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. It could be earlier, or you think the average?
That from the time that they did not pay their rent until you actually get them out of the property, it's going to be
yes,
45 to 60 days.
Okay.
The very initial process is filing failure to pay rent. Of course, that's where you want to make sure you have a set date that you're filing that, or a system in place. So for us, we file on the 6th of each month. You file that, within 3 weeks you have a court date. So that's going to take 2 to 3 weeks. Right now the courts are backed up.
That's
I do
true.
know that. So you say 3 weeks out for that. Once you have your court date, you get another 1 week until you have to file another paper, what's called a warrant of restitution. And then after that, there's another week that you have to wait to schedule. So that total that's 5 weeks right there.
Okay, so 4 to 6 weeks, you said, right? Okay, now Cristhian Huamani says, is that income before tax? So when we're verifying the income,
Yes.
3 times, is that before tax or after tax?
Yes, and it's also important if it's a lower income applicant, we count all. You do not want to discriminate against sources of income. Food stamps count. Cash assistance, any other kind of assistance, that kind of stuff counts towards their income.
Okay, so you said before tax?
Before taxes.
Okay, perfect.
Yep.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about if the unit's empty, how to put a tenant in there. Okay, let's say you got the ideal tenant, they send an application, and you say, you know what, this tenant, I see that there is minimal risk with this tenant. And what's the next step would be signing a lease, right? That would be the phase, the next phase. What can you tell us about the lease? How important it is? What are some of the terms that you have encountered, that addendums perhaps that must be added to the lease? What have you seen as a property manager? How important it is, really?
Oh well, it's your bread and butter. Everything goes back to your lease,
right?
So that's a really tough question. Our lease is a total. I think our total lease is like 16 pages.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you're abiding by state laws, abiding by local laws. You want to make sure you include those, but clearly define what your expectations are. That's really all I can say, and I know that's a really general thing to say, but it depends. Do you accept pets at your property?
So for me, you're asking me? Okay, so yeah, it all depends. I'll tell you why. If I'm renting in the winter, okay, it's you have to have some competitive advantage, because there's a lot of somewhat empty units that are competing, and there's not a lot of tenants looking. Now, if you're looking in the spring, summer, then I can tell you're going to fill your units right away. But when it comes to a season like winter, right, that's when you have to be competitive. And at that point, if I want to fill it out right away, I allow pets, because there's not a lot of property management companies that allow it. So it all depends on your unit too. Is it when you're talking about a 6-unit apartment building? So could it benefit, or could it be damage the property? Now, what if it's a small single family home with a backyard? I mean, that makes sense. So it all depends on what property we're talking about and how competitive I want to be in the marketplace. To answer your question, but I do allow pets myself.
So you just want to make sure that you have your policy clearly defined in that, how much is there a pet fee? What are you doing to protect your asset?
Right.
There's got to be a pet fee in there,
like a pet addendum, right?
Yeah.
So what type of pet, the breed of the pet, and how much it was. Now, what in your experience, what's best? Because I've heard some landlords just asking 200 or 250 per dog, or some landlords get the pet deposit and increase the rent for $50 or so. What is?
I don't agree with pet rent.
Okay.
I believe with a non-refundable pet fee.
Non-refundable pet fee. Okay.
Yep. And that can range anywhere from $250 to $500 per pet. It depends on how much. Again, you look at that application as a whole. How much you think? Where's your risk in that?
Okay.
Like how much? And then of course, if you were to choose to rent to this person with a pet, how much do you stand to lose? Do you have carpeting your property? Is there a lot of original woodwork that a dog animal might chew up? Is this a completely renovated that like with our properties we kind of renovate them to withstand that kind of stuff. We use laminate wood floors. We use certain things. So the damage is going to be very minimal. Usually the biggest problem is the crap or the smell or something like that. And
what about the smoking? Do you allow?
No, we don't allow it. But one thing I'll say is tenants will do what they want. You don't. They really will.
They'll be creative having their little whatever they create.
You want to look at this at the end of the day. Can it be painted and cleaned, and can you get this back into rentable order? Like, so this is how I look at every single thing. Can you pay the rent, and will you destroy the house?
Right.
That's all it boils down to.
Okay, I agree.
So at the end of the day, whatever you do,
very simplified, but yes.
Yeah, whatever you do in there is your business.
Yeah.
Are you paying the rent, and are you destroying the house? Are you causing me any kind of risk to my life?
Exactly, because you got to look for your expenses and income. Are you paying me, which is your income, and are you going to maintain the property correctly, which is your expenses? You have a tenant that takes ownership of the property, pays you in time. You want the tenant forever, okay? So we talked a little bit about the tenant placement, and now we talked a bit about the leasing, right? Some addendums that I can recommend, just out of my own personal experience. A bed bug addendum, right? So if the unit does not have bed bugs, you make the tenant sign an addendum that specifies, very simply, there is no bed bugs right now. You can inspect, and if there is any after you move in, all those expenses are going to be paid by you. Okay. So
ours is not an addendum. Ours is just in our lease.
In your lease, right?
Anything that has to do with pest control at a property that is a single family or half duplex, the tenant's responsible for it. So if it is a building, landlord's going to be responsible for it. If you have a multi-family or multi-unit building, and the reason is, in my experience, no matter what you do, what your lease says, what your addendum says, the judge is still going to see it that way. If you have control of a 6-unit building, the judge is going to say that it's your.
Well, I think that goes to markets also. Depend upon what markets you're also renting out in, you may have different things in your lease because those laws are going to vary wherever you go.
So just make sure if you include pests and rodents, that's.
And something about property management that, again, it's in my personal experience, and for those landlords or potential future landlords that are looking to manage their properties themselves, there is a lot of communication that you have to do with the tenants. And the whole point of really being a great landlord and having great tenants, if you're managing the properties yourself, is that you have, a lot of people make mistakes, and one of the biggest mistakes that I have seen, and that I've myself committed in the past when I got started, is that I got closer to the tenants where it was like the respect and the honesty wasn't there, because from the beginning they didn't take me seriously. They thought of me as I can certainly pay this guy late. And this happens very unconsciously. So I'll give you an example. When you meet your tenant, let's say the ideal tenant applied, throughout the whole conversation, you can't be too friendly. You have to understand that it is a business, and he will be a tenant and you will be the landlord. And there is a line, and they have to see that line consciously and unconsciously, because if they don't see the line and they think they're the landlord and they don't pay on time and they don't take ownership of the unit, that's a problem. Yeah. So a big advice that I can tell new investors, or even seasoned investors that are just shaking hands, not doing their due diligence, would be to really communicate to them and how important it is to have after you sign the lease, or right after you sign the lease, you go up to them again and you get a summary of the policy. Okay, a very simple fact, and you communicate to them, hey, look, I just want to reiterate a couple things. The rent is due the 1st, but you have until the 6th to pay me the rent. And if like I said, if I don't hear from you by the 5th or 6th, just imagine me in the line, filing your eviction documents. And you say that very direct and very honest. So they know, and what you're doing there is you're defining that line. Hey, look, I'm a landlord, I'm running a business, you're the tenant, I'm providing you value. So we rely on each other, but this is your responsibility and these are the policies. And this is the way it's gonna work. Otherwise, it's not gonna work.
Yeah. I would say with that is don't be so concerned with being overly friendly. You can be friendly, you can have real relationships, and you can have that. It's more important, again, to have the systems in place to be repetitive that teaches them. It doesn't matter if we have a nice conversation. Doesn't matter that.
Right.
On the 6th of the month, this is what's going to happen. I know that, like you said, it's oversimplified, but that's how I look at it.
Right.
At the end of the day, are you going to pay your rent? Are you going to destroy the property? And you have to, respect that tenant as a person.
Right. You have to be honest and direct
and,
with them.
Yeah,
right?
So, don't look at it, it's like, oh, I'm the landlord, you're the tenant. Look at it, this is a mutual
you don't say that, but you say that very unconsciously because, no, here's the thing. This is my opinion, okay? My opinion is the first impression has to be, this guy, I can't be late. Like they have to be, they really have to. It's like it's a conditioning.
I disagree.
How I feel. Well, at this point, I don't talk to tenants on an everyday basis of our rental properties unless I see them here in the office. But what I will say, what I think delivers that message is just when you get the court paperwork.
Yeah. Well, so very first impression to me, and it's all about your style of management and what you're going for. For me, it needs to be very clearly communicated that I am a human and you are a human.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's it. I understand life happens and things happen, and you directly affect my income.
Right.
And if I don't do my job and make sure that your property is up to code or, is maintained properly, I directly impact your living. It's just a human to human interaction.
I do think, though, that in the beginning, like, this is what I do, and it's been working out for me. So the first impression is important. Now, that doesn't mean you can't be somewhat friendly down the road. It's just the first impression. Once they start paying on time, the first 3, 4, 6 months, then you can communicate a little more and get closer to them. But you have to condition your tenants to pay on time, and when they don't, then you have to condition them by going and get the eviction documents right away. So I think it's important. I do understand your point. Is you can be human. I mean, maybe I sound more direct.
I do think you do, but it's your style and what you're going for. For me, the reason why I feel like I've developed what I have is just, it's been really, really important to me. And you said it in the beginning. The tenant's the absolute most important person in the operation. Of course. They affect everything. If they don't rent, then none of us get paid. So it's really, really important. I cannot stress that enough.
That was one of the main reasons why we also.
Why we chose to do this ourselves, because I felt like most property management companies didn't look at it that way. But it's really important to me that if you're investing or if you are looking to invest, just remember that it's a human, it's a person. Of course. And this is a relationship. I agree. It's a business relationship. It's an exchange. Home for money, money for home.
I do agree. It's just whenever the tenant, because I think, in a way, I mean, this is just my opinion, but it's somewhat of when there is a power struggle, I think that's a problem, because if you give a little too much power to the tenant can take advantage of that.
Well, it's just like this.
Not all, but some.
No, I don't see it that way at all. When you go to the grocery store, what do you give the person at the cashier?
What do I give them?
What do you give them?
Money. My credit card.
All right, then what do you get back?
Some groceries.
That's it. Yeah, there you go. So that's what I'm saying.
Right.
So it's
when somebody's in the house, all they need to do
is
just pay the rent so they can continue to live there.
So what happens if when they don't?
They get
then
evicted.
You just go through your systems and your process.
I get
that,
but I mean, I'm trying. It's been, like I said, it's been working out for me.
No. Everybody has their different
and what happens?
style.
And here's the thing. What happens is, because they do, when you really are honest and direct, they truly do respect you. Because then when they are not able to pay, they tell, hey, Christian, this has happened, and I'm sorry, man. I had that actually 3-4 months ago. Told me beforehand, Christian, I understand I'm going to leave before the end of the month. I mean, I was like, look, I'm trying to help you, but if you think you cannot pay, then I appreciate you telling me that. Yeah. And then she left.
Because you're having that conversation.
Right.
You're having
communication is the biggest thing. But sometimes I think a lot of times it is a process. You can't just be shake hands and I mean, that's my opinion.
Well, I think that's when you're looking at the value of properties you're either managing or doing.
Right.
Also,
yeah. And like at one point,
you can't just come out here and to every single person.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody. I do agree with Whitney. Everybody has their own way of managing, and I'm sure property management companies manage it very different from their individuals, like myself.
Absolutely.
But, I do agree.
But what you're saying may be an added layer of protection,
right?
Being what I've seen,
right,
when we were doing our own personal properties was sometimes there was some targeting, just because there's going to be some people out there that are looking for people that are not doing their proper screening process. And if you're taking your approach, you're probably going to get rid of that person that you don't want.
And it doesn't have to be as involved. It's just having that outline of what happens with the court case. But I forget what I was saying.
I think more importantly, what everybody out here needs to realize is when it comes to that person not paying the rent, you need to go by your local laws, but you need to file that paperwork immediately.
Exactly.
That's
the very and that needs to be communicated.
Yes.
That needs to be communicated in its entirety. I mean, through a document, initialized, signed, through storytelling. I mean, they need to understand the importance of and what happens if they don't. I think if you do that right, I mean, everybody can communicate that differently. But if you do that right, just communicating that, and they understand what happens if not.
Because you could talk to them all you want. Yeah. But if you don't file your proper paperwork, they're still sitting in your property. It doesn't matter how much you're saying you need to pay your rent. You need to pay the rent.
Correct. So just to summarize, we talked a little bit about Whitney's past and her story. We hit a couple things, very important things on property management, which is tenant placement, right? A lease agreement, and we talked about the eviction process a little bit of that. And how to communicate with the tenants, and I think how to communicate with the tenants, how to really manage your tenants. And I think if you get a couple tips and tricks, and I like to do this. So if you have 3 tips or tricks, Whitney, what would you? Just 3 things, the most important things for somebody out there that's just about to buy their first buy and hold rental. What would be the 3 most important tips you would give?
Remember to always care and that you're dealing with a human being. That's like, I know that sounds crazy, but that's my biggest number 1. Number 2, do your due diligence and understand and create an outline of processes for everything that you're going to handle. Just make sure you have an outline and how you're going to handle and manage everything. And then 3, at the end of remember that you are doing this for money. It is for a passive income.
That's true.
So make sure the other 2, you're dealing with a human, that you are following your processes, and make sure at the end of the day you're making money. Not making creating stress for yourself. That this is what you're doing. So. There's a lot of things that can go into that. Don't over renovate. Don't do this. You're in this to make money.
And we got a question from William Luther again. And thanks, William, for being active here, asking questions. As an owner, how do you determine if utilities are included in rent or if tenants is responsible?
I would say if you have a single unit, you want to try to get that. You want to try to have that expense passed off as much as you possibly can. If it depends on how it's metered or how it is. If you have, I know again you invest in a lot of multi-units. They're usually on 1 meter. You got 1 boiler system. Absolutely. So you're going to cover that bill and adjust your rent.
Yeah, you definitely want to buy. It all depends on how to buy right. Right. Today's topic is how to hold right in the property management, but. When we talk about how to buy right, you want to make sure you buy units where you're paying the least amount of money, which means that most of the utilities are paid by the tenants, not by you. That's very important. So I would say, to answer your question, what determines, it's the property that you have. It's the rental that you have.
Absolutely.
Or the market that you have.
The market that you have, correct.
To stay competitive.
Yeah. Cristhian Huamani said, good tips. Thanks, man. I appreciate that, Cristhian. He's always been a follower here. I think at this point we're going to close this. Whitney, a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. And give her a kiss, huh? Happy Valentine's
Day.
So, on that note, guys, we certainly appreciate you guys joining in. And again, as always, we want to invite you to our Fusion Real Estate Investing Network. The first Saturday of this March 3rd, I believe, right?
Yes,
at noon.
first Saturday of every month at Bulls and Bears. Actually, last month we had it was really good show.
Well, we had like a 17, 20 plus show. So this time we're going to decide the topic soon. But if you have questions that you want to get answered to, make sure you comment below and we can talk a little bit about that maybe in the upcoming.
With your thing, just make sure if you guys are following a Facebook event, go ahead and use that Eventbrite thing to get a ticket. It's free. But it's free, but we just want to make sure that because there was such a huge turnout last time compared to your usual turnouts, that you guys are able to keep track of that. So I helped you guys out. I placed the link inside of the Facebook event. They can share it, invite you guys to it, but click on that to make sure you reserve your ticket on there.
Absolutely. Whether you're a beginner or a seasoned investor, we want to invite you. And again, Whitney, you can put the Billwood Properties links. If you're an investor that you're looking for a property management company, Billwood is the best company to work here in Hagerstown. So make sure you do that. Until next time, guys, take care.
What is your topic for next week or next March?
We're still live.
We're still live, right?
Man,
so I thought that you were going to share with your viewers. What is your next topic for your?
I think we're gonna gather some feedback.
Buy and hold.
And how to build your portfolio.
Just cut them off. They don't know what they're doing. Sorry. I'm just
Are we still live or? Oh, I didn't expect that question.